All right, I think we are live now. Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 6, I think, of Chat Loop Back Off. Pretty excited to have everybody here with me today. My name's Jeremy. If you haven't seen me before, I'll be guest hosting today. We're getting super close to KubeCon, so Gphy is actually on his way to KubeCon. If you don't know me, my name's Jeremy. I'm a chair for SIG release in Kubernetes, and I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. I've done a bunch of things in the cloud native space, so you may have seen me in a few other places. I'm in Colorado, and it's a super cold, wintry day. I actually didn't have power until about 20 minutes ago, so super exciting that I could be on the stream with everybody today. We're getting a really crazy late winter snowstorm, but I guess that's pretty normal for springtime in the Rockies. We're going to get something like 30 centimeters or 12 inches of snow when this is all said and done, which is pretty exciting. I think can't have a stream without some sort of exciting event kind of kicking in. But I've got some tea and the sweater's pretty warm, so let's kick the stream off. This live stream is a sibling to a similarly named show called Clash Loop Back Off, which is an event that's held at KubeCons and is more of a competition style thing. You can kind of think of Iron Chef. In that one, two competitors get pitted together to solve some sort of challenge where they don't really have any info on what the challenges are going to be. So it's really about kind of learning and seeing how those experiences go. It's meant to be laid back mostly and generally pretty fun. This stream is more of a self-inflicted kind of challenge where we're going to take a topic where we haven't done any real in-depth research, and we're going to instead focus on how we learn and take a new approach to that topic and kind of see where our journey takes us. I'm gonna go through and read some documentation and kind of learn about the project like I normally would, even if I wasn't on a stream today. In doing so, I hope we can all walk away with some new information about the project and just a greater awareness of the cloud native ecosystem. Today, we're going to be learning about Telepresence, which is a CNCF sandbox project that aims to provide fast local development for Kubernetes and OpenShift microservices. That sounds pretty cool. I think anything that can help us kind of shift that development loop to the left sounds pretty cool to me as a person that builds services and ships them to Kubernetes. So I'm excited to have you here to dive into the project with me today, figure out how it works. And again, hopefully we can all learn a little bit more about the cloud native ecosystem and come away with some new knowledge. During the live stream, feel free to drop questions into the chat, and I'll try to get to as many of those as I can. If you see that I'm struggling or you have a suggestion, you've worked with this project before, please feel free to interject and drop some suggestions into the chat and help us all learn and go along. I think that's where we're all going to get the most benefit out of this. And when we learn as a community and as a group, I think that's the best outcome for us. That said, this is an official live stream of the CNCF and is subject to the CNCF Code of Conduct. So please don't add anything to the chat that or the questions that would violate the Code of Conduct. Basically, just please respect everybody in the chat, all the fellow the participants and me. This video will be available on YouTube afterwards, so folks that couldn't make it today will be able to still follow along and join us just asynchronously. Before we dive into Telepresence, though, let's take a spin around the cloud native landscape and see what kind of news is out there, maybe just see some exciting new developments that are happening. And obviously the most important one is KubeCon is upon us. I'm going to share my screen really quick and we can look at a couple of links while we're going through this. Let me see if I can do that. I'm trying to use 2 screens. We'll see how this goes. Okay, I think this will work. Maybe. Give me 1 second here. There it is. There's the bar. Okay, so I'm going to click this button, and hopefully we'll see a live screen in just a second. Adding the source, sharing my screen. All right, hopefully that's showing up now. Anybody in the chat want to? Oh, hey Nuno, nice to see you in the chat with us today. Super bummed that I won't be at KubeCon. Really bummed to miss out on this. I think there's a lot of really cool content in the schedule. If we click on explore the schedule, we can see a bunch of really cool things. There's a lot of content, even on the pre-days, that I think people can take advantage of. Seems like a really extensive set of lightning talks, a bunch of which I think are really, really exciting. And again, like I'm really bummed that I'm going to miss this. But one thing I wanted to call people's attention to, and let's see if we can find it in here, is ChatLoopBackOff. I mentioned that kind of in the intro. It's the kind of the competitive version of this. I did it at KubeCon in Chicago, and it was super fun. It's in the Project Pavilion. Two competitors go head to head with the challenge that Giphy gives us right before the event, so we don't really get any time to prepare. And it's stressful and fun all at the same time. I think the audience had a really good time in Chicago, so I totally recommend people check this one out. I think I got a little sneak preview of who's going to be involved, and it should be pretty fun. The challenges look like they're going to be pretty good too. So if you're going to be at KubeCon, definitely check out Pavilion number 7 in the Project Pavilion space at 18:30 on Wednesday. I think it'll be a super good time. All right, and then next, as I was kind of looking for some new updates, I saw there were a number of things in the ecosystem about WASM lately. There was a project announced yesterday, I think, called Spin Cube from the people at Fermyon. And I also noticed on the CNCF blog that there was an intro post just a couple days ago about WebAssembly on Kubernetes. So it seems like a pretty hot topic. And I thought this was just an interesting one. I don't know a ton about WebAssembly in this space, so I thought this was a pretty interesting blog. It kind of walks through some overviews of like what it is, and then dives into some of the tooling. And if you're going to be at KubeCon, I think there's a keynote that's happening on Thursday. Let's see if we can find that. A couple lightning talks, it looks like. Tutorial, pretty cool. Yeah, so a panel discussion. Revolutionizing cloud native architectures with WebAssembly. That I think will be another really cool way to learn a little bit more about WebAssembly. Would recommend folks check that out if you're interested in WebAssembly. That'll be at Thursday at 9:15. And it looks like it has folks from Fermyon, from Zeiss, and from Microsoft, moderated by Taylor. Should be a pretty good time. Another one that I thought was pretty cool was that OpenTelemetry has applied for graduation, to move from incubation to graduation. That'll be a really cool evolution to see that happening. This has been a long time in the works, and last year there was a lot of work put into stabilizing things and getting things ready to go. I'm sure we'll all be happy to see some stability with OpenTelemetry going forward. So that's really an exciting development to see. And then lastly, really close to my own heart, the Kubernetes release team has just released the Kubernetes 130 beta. So if you're tracking along, you might be aware of this, but this is the point at which the release is starting to firm up. We've hit code freeze already, so the beta release is going to be your first opportunity to really see some of the functionality that's going to land in the release. Definitely subject to change. Definitely are probably some rough edges and some issues, but if you have the ability, I would totally recommend checking out that release. If you run into any issues or bugs, definitely feel free to open issues. Help make this a more stable, easy to consume, better release for everybody else. We're just about a month away from the release, so here's the kind of the calendar. If we want to scroll through that a little bit. KubeCon EU. So we're just about right here. So Tuesday is when the beta release happens. Pretty fresh off that. Headed into KubeCon, not a whole lot's going to happen. I think like most places, kind of slows down. The release team definitely takes a break for that. But once they come back, it's going to be right back into things. And we'll have release blogs ready to go, feature blogs ready to go. There'll be a test freeze, and then your last chance to have input with the RCs, and then on April 17th, we're going to have Kubernetes 130.0. That's pretty exciting. I was the release lead for 120, so it's amazing to see that we've gotten 10 releases past that. It seems like it's not been that long, but we're definitely getting there. All right, so now we're going to dive into Telepresence. We've gotten that news out of the way. Let's turn to the matters at hand. So I'm going to close these other windows, and we're just going to open up the Telepresence project itself. Again, I haven't done any real research into this. I'm familiar with what it does, but beyond that, haven't really invested any time in learning about it. So we're going to do that together right now. Let me bring up the chat just so I have everything in case anybody wants to ask anything while we're going. And we should be able to do that down here. Boom, there we go. Okay. Okay, so what is Telepresence? So Telepresence is a sandbox project in the CNCF. Looks like it was started by the team at Ambassador Labs. They're responsible for some cool networking stuff. It purports to be a fast local development for Kubernetes and OpenShift. So they want to accelerate the dev loop, shift testing left, which is super great, and then use your existing workflow. So not making you learn a new code editor or a new debugger profile, or just using what you have today. Anything that runs on your laptop will work with Telepresence. That seems pretty cool. I'm not sure how it works though, so let's check that out. So Telepresence consists of two architecture components, the client-side Telepresence binary. So I guess we're going to have to install that onto my Mac. And then the cluster-side traffic manager and traffic add-on. So those will be in our Kubernetes cluster. I'm going to try to do this with Kind today. I can go spin up a cluster in a cloud provider, but I want to really focus on trying to keep this in my local development environment, which would normally be my Mac. So we'll try that out first. Okay, so looks like the Telepresence connect command utilizes that component in the cluster to do some proxying between our development machine and the cluster. We're going to try it out locally first to see how that works. But I think we can extrapolate that might look the same for a remote cluster. And then running Telepresence intercept service name triggers the traffic manager to install a traffic agent proxy that runs within the pod. So maybe a sidecar that goes along with that. We'll try that out. Okay, so looks like they've got a getting started button. We're going to just start with that. That's how I would normally go about trying this out. Get it installed, and then we'll kind of work through reading some more of the docs to understand what we're doing. Okay, so prerequisites, we need kubectl, and I definitely have one of those installed. Let's check, make sure. kubectl, yep, cool. And this is 129.2, so using a pretty new release. I also already have a Kind cluster. Hopefully that'll satisfy this, a Kubernetes deployment and a service. I think I have one of those handy too, so we can totally check that out. I've got these sample projects that I've used a bunch of different times from DigitalOcean, and inside of here, I think maybe Game 2048 seems like a good one. I think Giphy used one of those in the Gateway API episodes. We'll use that just for some continuity. Okay, so what do we do first? It looks like to do this, we're going to use curl to install it. I definitely have a silicone Mac, so we're going to try this one down here. Almost did the wrong thing. So let's grab that. Nothing like pseudo curling things from the internet. So let's give that a whirl first. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to run, let me know if the text is big enough on this, folks in the chat, if you're having trouble seeing it or not. Going to run this. We're going to, looks like curl down that binary from getambassador.io and then install it to user local bin Telepresence. So that makes sense. Doing that now. Okay, so now, moment of truth. Do we have Telepresence? Permission denied. Is that in the instructions? Sure enough. Jumping ahead of myself. Pretty zoom in just maybe for the replay. Okay, I can do that. Thanks, Nuno. Let's give that a whirl. Okay, so we will sudo chmod this. User local bin, Telepresence. Okay, so now, once more. What did they say? A plus X. Okay, let's give that a try. User local bin, Telepresence. Okay, so once more. These are our Telepresence. I probably have. Oh, I don't know why it's not picking it up. Nuno said, but it's a website at the same time, so it should be fine. We only see the web page right now, but not the console. Oh, you don't see the web page. Is that not showing up in here? Let's see. Maybe I need to change what I'm sharing. I'll also zoom that text. So can you? Yeah, I see in the stream that it's not showing that. So let me stop sharing and I'll share again. Let's see. I have never done this before. Okay. It's still only picking up the website. Technical difficulties. All right, we can fix this. I was sharing the wrong thing. I was sharing a screen or a window, not a screen. Okay. Now is that showing up correctly? Can we see the terminal? I think so. I see it in the stream window now. Boom. Okay, cool. So let's take a look at Telepresence. So we've got the command here, and it's got a bunch of different commands underneath of it: a config, a connect, gather logs, gather traces, generate YAML, a Helm subcommand, probably used for installing some things, help, intercept. I think that one was mentioned before. Bunch of different commands I think that we'll try to walk through here. So let's bounce back to the docs for a second and keep going through our quick start guide here. Okay, so we did that. Now we need to install Telepresence into our cluster. So we're going to run the Telepresence Helm install command. Let's give that a shot. And I think it says you're going to need root access on the machine, so probably need to do this with sudo. Sudo helm install. Okay. Cool. Traffic manager successfully installed. Let's take a look at what's in our cluster now. I'm going to do a kubectl get pods, and let's look across all the namespaces because I have no idea where this was installed. Oh, my terminal's not responding now. Oh, what's happening? Okay, let's try that again. kubectl get pods -a. Okay, so in this one, you can see the normal things that come with kind, the things that are living in kubesystem, but we definitely have this new namespace ambassador and a pod inside of it called traffic manager. I'm kind of curious what else is in there, so let's do kubectl get all in the namespace ambassador. Okay, so we've got a pod. Obviously, we saw that a second ago. Looks like there's one replica of it running. There is a service, which is of type cluster IP, agent injector, and there's a traffic manager. We also have a deployment and a replica set that goes along with that. I'm gonna see if I can. Kind of curious what it looks like, so we're going to describe it. Okay, opens up some ports, it looks like. Looks like it's running correctly. I'm going to get the YAML, just kind of curious about what it has. Oh, sorry, let's get it in YAML. All right, so we have normal deployment with a bunch of metadata goes along with it. That's fine. Okay, so the containers we have our Telepresence image right here, coming from Docker Hub, DataWire. Probably, I think that was the ambassador name from a long time ago. Looks like it exposes a couple ports, one for gRPC, one for the API. Has some normal stuff. Oh, so it's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot going on inside of this right now. Okay, so let's jump back to our getting started guide and see what's next. Okay, so we want to intercept a service next. With Telepresence, you can create global intercepts that intercept all traffic going into your service in your remote cluster and then route it to your local environment instead. So we're going to connect to your local cluster with Telepresence Connect and connect to the Kubernetes API server. All right, so let's do that. Telepresence Connect. Okay, connected to context kind namespace default. So if we do this now, exactly what I'd expect because it's not authenticated. But that's cool. All right. Yep, 401 is responses. Okay, so now you have access to your remote Kubernetes API server as if it were on the same network. Mine was already. So maybe a kind cluster wasn't the best for this, but we're going to keep going with that just for now. Enter telepresence list and make sure the service you want to intercept is listed. Okay, so let's see. I shouldn't have anything here. No workloads, deployments, stateful sets, or replicas. Okay, so let's deploy one. We need to have that. That was one of the prerequisites. So I'm going to bounce over and use that sample application. That's going to be in Kubernetes examples, sample apps. Okay, and then game 2048. Okay, so we're going to use this as our project. It's funny, they use Tilt for this. I think that's another tool that's kind of in that space. Okay, so for this one, we're going to need to build this Docker file and deploy it. And then looks like they use customize to deploy a couple things. So let's do that first. We're going to build it. I think the instructions in the README were pretty good last time I used this, which was quite a while ago. But we're going to do that. So we're going to do Docker build. We'll put it into my Docker hub. Makes sense. 2048 latest. Okay, so we built the image pretty quickly. Let's do a Docker push. Okay, cool. And while that's going, maybe I'll create a Kubernetes cluster in Azure just to have a remote one that we can try this out on as well. So I'll do AKS create. I don't remember how to do this, so we're going to use the Azure CLI real quick to do that. Okay, so we want to do basically AKS create, and then the resource group and the name it's going to be in. So we'll do AZ group create dash name crash loop back off and location. Let's do South Central US. That should be pretty close to me. Oh, okay. We gotta log in again, so we'll do that in a second. But I had this open again already. So we built that, and now we want to push that to the registry. Did that. Okay, so we want to deploy this to Kubernetes. We have to use customize for that. And it looks like the customization uses just a couple of files that are in this resources folder. So let's update this deployment and get it going. Looks like this will be pretty easy to change. So let's just do that real quick. I think I called it 2048 latest, right? Let's see. Yeah, 2048. Okay, cool. So that should be fine. I think everything else here is exactly what we want. It's going to create a namespace for us and a service. Okay, so we should be good to go. And I think this will be really easy to deploy. kubectl, yep, kubectl apply, -k, customize. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so kubectl apply -f customize. No map been found for the name and namespace blah. In from customize. customization. If we go back up one, I don't think that'll matter, but okay, what's wrong with my customization here? That looks correct. All right. I don't think we actually need customize for this, so let's just try to deploy it. We'll do kubectl create namespace, and we'll call it game 2048. Okay, that's fine. Apply -k. Oh, is it -k? You're totally right. I read that wrong. Thanks, Chiefy. Made you open your laptop. Yeah, and per the docs. I was looking right at it and typed the wrong thing. Jeez. Okay, so that should work. All right, so now kubectl get pods game 2048. Okay, invalid image name. So let's take a look at that. Did I not save this? Let's apply it again. Nope, I had not saved that. Cool. Okay, so now that's running. So we should have a nice little thing running. So I could do something like kubectl port forward to this thing. And let's try that out real quick. 8080, 8080. In the namespace, game 2048. Okay, so now that's port forwarded. And we'll do localhost 8080. Ah, cool. There's my game. That's fun. Okay, so that's running locally, and it's on my kind cluster. So that's cool. So now we've got a thing deployed. So I think now if we go back to the docs and we do telepresence list, that should show us one of the things that's ready to go. So let's kill that port forward, and let's try telepresence list. Okay, so first thing I had to do was make sure that I use the right namespace. So I think in this documentation, it's assuming you're working out of the default namespace, or you've configured your config to use the one you want to use. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at the docs. Okay, so we have our game 2048 there. It's ready to intercept, but the traffic agent isn't installed yet. So I think that's the next step that we want to do here. So we want to get the name of the port that we want to intercept on our service. So we want to do kubectl get service name, output YAML, and then look for the port we want to use. So we know the one we want to use is 8080. So let's find which one that is. So we'll do kubectl get service game 2048. Okay, so we want to do get service game 2048, and we'll grab the YAML. That's what the doc said to do. Okay, so it's named HTTP. That makes pretty easy. Okay, so the docs say that we want to do telepresence intercept the name of the service and then port whatever the local port is and then the remote port. So we actually didn't need the name of, I think we just needed 8080, so we could have probably just jumped to that real fast. For port, we want to specify the local instance that the service is running on. If it's using multiples, you can specify the one you want to intercept after a colon. And then for the end file, specify a file path for telepresence to write the environment variables that are set in the pod. The example below shows telepresence intercepting traffic going to service example service. Requests now reach the service on port HTTP, and the cluster get routed to 8080 on the workstation. Okay. Oh, okay. So actually, you do need the name of the port. It might work with numeric things too, but we'll try it this way. I think that'll be the easiest. Okay, so let's do telepresence intercept. I don't have completion turned on, so you're gonna have to deal with my bad typing. Game 2048, and then again, we want to use port, let's say 8181, because that's different. And then HTTP, and then --env file. We'll say I bet we got to specify the namespace yet again. I probably should just switch the namespace so that I don't keep forgetting, but let's do that. Use telepresence connect to set the namespace. Okay, cool. So let's try that. Telepresence connect. Let's check that out. Telepresence connect and namespace string. Okay, so let's do that. Telepresence connect namespace game 2048. Please quit telepresence and reconnect. Is there a telepresence disconnect? Doesn't look like it. Connect to a cluster. Remove existing intercepts, leave. I don't think we want to do that one yet. Telepresence quit, tell the daemon to quit. Okay, let's do that. Okay, cool. So now we should be good to do this again with connect, and we'll do namespace game 2048. Okay, so now we've connected again with the namespace game 2048. And I think now if we do telepresence list, there we go. So game 2048 ready to intercept. So mental note, if you're using this, you definitely want to connect to the right namespace if you're not using the default namespace. Okay. I love learning things live and stumbling across them. It's super fun. Okay, so now let's try that intercept again. And we should be able to remove this, this namespace thing back here. So again, what we're going to try to do, I think, is run telepresence intercept with the name of the service, which was game 2048. And then the port we want to use is 8181 locally, and then HTTP in the remote thing. So let's give that a go. Okay, cool. So that looks like it was successful. So we're using the deployment game 2048. The intercept name is game 2048. It looks like it's active, and the destination is localhost 8181. So now if we go to new terminal window here, localhost 8181. Oh, okay, so maybe we didn't do that yet. Let's keep going in the docs. Okay, so start your local development environment using environment variables retrieved from the previous step. Okay, so let's take a look at what that looks like. We've got env intercept.env. Okay, so let's take a look at what that is. Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. Okay, so game 2048 ports, telepresence container, bunch of stuff going on here. Okay, so the following are some examples of how to pass the environment variables to your local processes. Docker run and provide the path using the argument file. Visual Studio Code, that's the one we're going to try, I think. So we want to specify the path to the environment file in the env field of your config. I've actually never done that before, so let's maybe start with Docker and see. All right, so just running a regular Docker container with that stuff, Ubuntu bash. So let's just run an Ubuntu container like this with that file and see what happens if we can connect to it that way. Okay, so let's do Docker run --env file. env intercept. I'll do just run Ubuntu bash. That sounds good. Okay, so if we look at the env in here, it looks like all that stuff was intercepted and is good to go. Go back to our telepresence quick start. All traffic previously routed to your Kubernetes service is now routed to your local environment. Oh, okay. So is this routing things from, if I hit the service, is it routing it to the deployment that I would have locally? Is that the way this would work? Not the other way around. So let's see what happens if I try to port forward to that service and see what happens. Services game 2048. Wrong command. Wrong spelling. Okay, so let's port forward to that again. It's the inverse of port forwarding, which I didn't really think about till just now. I think is exactly the right, that's the right approach. So I think what I really need to do is get this thing running locally so that I can connect to it as the local thing. So that's an interesting approach. And then, so let's try that out. So 8080, 8080. Okay, so we're port forwarding, and I'm curious, like if I run to this now, okay, so it's still like the service intercepts, it looks like. It's still hitting that thing, right? I don't think there's... Okay. I want to see what's in here in the logs. So unzip, telepresence logs. Okay, so traffic manager. I'm kind of curious what that deployment looks like now. I'll come back to trying to get it to work in a second, but let's kubectl get pods game 2048. Ah, okay, so there's two pods in it, so it does look like it injected a sidecar. So if we do kubectl get deployments game 2048. Let's get the YAML for that, sorry. Okay, what do we got? Yep, looks like it was restarted by Telepresence, and in the containers now, still only have my original pod. Oh, kubectl get pods. Okay, kubectl describe pod. Okay, yeah, so it added another container, which is the data wire container. And if we get that thing as a YAML, we can look at it. Okay, so we've got our normal game 2048 container, and then we have our telepresence container. which is using the image from Docker Hub. Okay, cool. So that's what it does. It installs a sidecar. I think that's what's collecting the traffic. I wonder what the service looks like now. Let's take a look at that. Okay, it is still pointing at port 8080 in the HTTP port. So this is like a reverse, a port forward from inside of the container. Does that seem right? Is that so you can connect from your app back to local? I'm trying to wrap my head around what this is doing right now. Okay, let's look at the pod again. So there's port 8080 from my app. Port 9090 for Telepresence. What was in the end file again? Let's. Okay, yep, there's normal things that I would expect. Okay, let's check out the docs again. Let's see. Gives us any more info. Start your local environment using environment variables retrieved from the previous step. What's next? Yeah, so we can see those things. This doesn't really give me much pointer on what I want to do there. Okay, well, let's take a look at the architecture while we're here. With Telepresence, you can make changes on the fly and see them reflected when interacting with your Kubernetes environment. It's just like hot reloading, but it works across local and remote environments. Query services and microservice are APIs that are only accessible in your remote cluster's network. Set breakpoints in your IDE and reroute remote traffic to your local machine to make that seems really cool. Anybody in the chat, if you've used this and you have suggestions on like how I can, using these docs, get that going, would love to see it. Let's check out the other docs and see if there's another way. So you've got installing things there. Core concept. Okay, how do I intercept a service from your own environment? Okay, so before you begin, you need to have Telepresence installed. Got that. Okay, so intercepting your service. Yep. Okay, so this is basically the doc we just have. Proxy outbound traffic to my cluster. Okay, let's give this a shot. Curl web app emoji photo. That's another. Oops. Emoji photo is another sample that's in here. That's funny. Okay, so we want to with Telepresence, I think we're able to access it like that way. So let's try that. So we are connected already. Telepresence status. Okay, that's cool. We're connected. And we've got one intercept. If we do Telepresence list, yep, there's our intercept name. So now I wonder if the it's just service.namespace. Okay, so that should be fine, right? We can do curl game 2048, game 2048, oops, 2048, sorry, dot. And we want port 8080, right? Nope. Oh, that's wrong. Okay, cool. Empty reply from server. That's better. So now, if I put this in the browser, does that work? Nope. Let's give that a try. We're going to try telepresence quit and see if it changes it. Yeah, okay, so it was resolving things, just not going through my browser correctly. So we do telepresence connect again. We should be able to bring that back up. Oh, I want the namespace, right? Okay, and then if we try that again. Hey, that's cool. It's returning something now. So if I do, it's working. So now I can play that, and I'm accessing it just like it is a local pod. So there's the name of the service, and there's the name of the namespace, and there's the port it's on. That's pretty cool. So you can connect that way and do stuff. That's pretty handy. Okay, work with large clusters. Here we go. Network considerations for locally hosted clusters. That probably would have been useful for me to find a few minutes ago. So Telepresence connects a virtual network interface that maps the cluster subnets to the host machine. Cool. Okay, so there are instructions if you're using something like K3s or Minikube, Docker for desktop, that may come into play and make things a little bit easier here. This still hasn't gotten me to the point where I really know how to really debug this. I think that I can spend some more time trying to find the docs for that, and that's probably what I'll do after this. But I'm going to jump back to the quick start because at the bottom there was a link to learning about the architecture, and I want to do that while we're here. So we've gotten this working, and we've kind of seen what the components look like. So we did a couple of things like kubectl get pods in game 2048, and we see that there's two pods now, or two containers, I guess, inside of that pod, one of which is the telepresence piece. kubectl get services. There's our service. I'm curious if the endpoints are different. It's endpoints the same, so it's just intercepting things on my machine, kind of doing that way. So that's pretty neat. But it doesn't really give me a good idea of what the architecture looks like. So let's look at what this looks like. This is a pretty decent diagram, I think. So this is the cluster, and this is that traffic manager component, which is living in that ambassador namespace. kubectl get pods ambassador. Okay, so there's our traffic manager, and I bet if we were to do something like get the logs of that from ambassador, we can see the things that it's doing. It's injecting some patches into the pod to make it ready. It's injecting the traffic manager agent into the pod. So we've got our stuff there. That's cool. But what we really have going on is there's that component running, which is the one that's in the ambassador namespace. Here's our intercepted service and the intercepted container. So the service is going through the traffic agent. Here's the agent injector. I was curious if there was another service for my like a fake service for my thing, but it doesn't look like it. Okay, so the traffic agent is the sidecar that gets injected in an intercepted thing. So that's cool. We saw that. Depending on the type of intercept that gets created, the traffic agent will either route the incoming request to traffic manager so that it gets routed to the developer's workstation, or it will pass it along to the container and the pod, usually handing the request. Oh, so there's maybe different types of intercepts. Yeah, so you can build a Docker container from the given Docker context and run it with the intercepted environment. That's pretty cool. So if you wanted to run my my 2048 pod locally, I think that's one thing we'd probably want to do. We want to use Docker build, pass that to it to make it work that way. That's pretty cool. Emit the remote environment to an M file and compose format. We did that already. Run our Docker container with the intercepted environment already. So that's neat. There's a bunch of different options here that didn't come up when we were just looking at the documentation. So definitely pays to run the commands and kind of mess around with them a little bit more, and kind of understand what you want to do. A lot of different options here that I don't think we have time to play with since we're almost out of time here. But I think this has given me enough to start kind of understanding how I would use this locally. I think the quick start could be a little bit better. Maybe like here's an actual example of a service to use, so it was a little bit more walkthrough-y instead of having to figure some of that out. But I think this is pretty useful. This is what I'm going to check out next time. Actually, when we're done here, I'm going to keep diving into this a little bit more. But I think it'd be really cool to try that. So actually, before we get off real quick, let's see if we can do that. We're in the directory where that container is. Let's do telepresence. And I think there was a command to remove the intercept. Okay, so let's do that. Telepresence leave. Yeah, the intercept name, right? So it should be just this. Let's connect again, see if that's our issue. Okay. Okay, so we have our friend there, right? So if we do telepresence leave, just takes flags and then the intercept name, right? So I think it should just be game 2048. Intercept name game 2048 not found. Is there another name for it in here? All right. Well, that's weird. Let's see if we can make another telepresence in the 4 minutes we got left. Let's try that. Telepresence intercept. Actually, let's see what we did before. Telepresence. So I did 2048 port. Okay, so let's make a new one. We'll say telepresence intercept. And we'll call it game 2048-2. And I think there was a workload flag that if you use a different one. So we're going to do that. So game 2048. And then 8282 HTTP. That's what we're going to do. And then I think that command was, if we scroll back a little bit, find it, Docker build string for the given Docker context path or URL. Okay, so if we do Docker build like this and dot. Oh, I'm in the wrong directory. That's why. We're running low on time and I'm. Okay, let's do that. Do that again. Okay, so now we should be making another intercept, which is going to be my game 2048-2. I think that workload flag is what's going to pick the workload. And I'm curious what the Docker build. Okay. Port must be of the format port, local port, container port, service port identifier. Okay, so we want to do 8080 and then HTTP, I think is what we want. Oh, okay, I think that is running my thing. Let's see what the logs look like for the actual pod. Okay, get pod. Okay, so there's our pod. kubectl log/f. Yeah, so that's exactly the instructions we expect to see, right? The output we expect to see. HTTP server version, the settings that are happening there, and then where it's available at. So that's what we've got going on here now. And I think if I were to go in here and curl game 2048 dot game 2048. Oops, sorry. 8080, right? That's the cool. So it's returning something, and we are seeing the curls happen in the pod that's running. So that's really cool. So we've got that thing running, and it's again, I think like Jiffy said in the chat, it's reverse port forwarding. So it's forwarding from inside the cluster back to the daemon that's running on my machine now, which is pretty cool. So that would allow you to run this thing in debug mode. If you were able to run in VS Code, I would need to set up a dev environment like that. But I think that would give me the opportunity to be able to do kind of step through debugging and stuff. So that's gonna be my next step here. Unfortunately, it won't be on the stream because we're out of time. But hopefully, this has given you enough kind of context on telepresence to know where to begin. You can run this on remote clusters. I think that would be the real interesting use case. My kind version is kind of maybe not the best example of that, but if you spin up a cluster in a cloud provider or on bare metal somewhere else, you could use this to be able to connect back to a deployment on your machine. Like the actual workload could be on your dev laptop, and you could work through that in a much faster way than building the container, pushing the container, restarting, building the container, pushing the container and restarting. So this seems really cool. I wish I had maybe done a little bit of research beforehand, but that ruins the fun of this, right? Like doing the prep work, I think takes away some of the fun of kind of stumbling through and seeing some of this stuff. So thanks for joining me today. I hope that you got something useful out of this. And we'll see you again next time. Again, if you're going to KubeCon, have a safe trip. Have a great KubeCon. Um, share on your social media all the cool things you see. It'd be really awesome to see what folks take away from that too. So have a great day and have a great week.